The air is thick, smells like bleach and something else, something rotten. You try to move, just a finger. You can't. Ropes, tying your wrists, your ankles, so tight they're digging into your skin. And then you hear him. That voice, the one you thought was charming, the one that messaged you on Tinder just 2 days ago. It's right there, close. And as the darkness around you starts to clear and you realize where you are, you hear him say something you can't quite process. Something about cleaning up. This wasn't a bad date. This wasn't a weird guy. This was the moment. The exact second you realized the man you met for drinks, the man who had you laughing an hour ago, was the last thing you would ever see.
Woman doesn't realize her Tinder date is a serial killer until it's too late. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're peeling back the facade of modern dating, because this isn't some cautionary tale about a weird guy who won't take a hint. This is the story of Sydney Loofe, a normal 24-year-old who just wanted to find love on Tinder. She was sweet, loved her family, worked a steady job, and she matched with a man who had already killed at least one woman and preyed on countless others. A man police had absolutely no idea was even a suspect. He was charming, attentive, and hiding a dark secret. He was part of a terrifying, murderous duo. The details of this case, they'll get under your skin. They involve witchcraft, a decades-long spree of manipulation, and a completely innocent young woman who was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. By the end of this video, you'll hear the chilling text messages right before the abduction, the one mistake that finally got him caught, and how this couple almost got away with it forever. Grab your coffee, lock your doors, let's dive in. Our story starts where so many modern love stories begin, with a little thumb swipe. It was November 2017. Sydney was in Lincoln, Nebraska. She was on Tinder, and she was looking for a connection. She sees a profile, Aubrey Trail. The picture shows a middle-aged man, maybe late 40s, with a gentle, slightly mischievous look. The bio, it was perfectly crafted. Not too desperate, not too smooth. He seemed financially stable. He seemed safe. Now, here's the thing. Aubrey wasn't the one managing the profile. The person Sydney was actually talking to, the person crafting the messages, was Bailey Boswell. Bailey was 23, young, attractive, and Aubrey's longtime, utterly subservient accomplice. Aubrey was 51, manipulative, and he knew exactly how to use Bailey's profile to lure victims. He'd done it before. Think about it. You're Sydney. You match with a cute younger girl, Bailey. The conversation is easy. It flows. You talk about music, work, where you want to travel. It's the ideal first few days of a dating app chat. Bailey. Hey girl, we should totally grab a drink soon. I just moved here and don't know anyone. Sydney. Definitely. I'm free Thursday after 6. Perfect. I know this cute dive bar. I'll text you the address. On November 15th, Sydney and Bailey went on their first date. Sydney told her roommate it was fine, nothing special, a little weird, maybe, but fine. She even agreed to go out with her again a few days later. But why a second date? Because Aubrey, pulling the strings, knew you can't rush things. He wanted to build trust. And that second date, November 16th, that was the night Sydney would never come home. Sydney told her roommate she was going to Aubrey and Bailey's apartment to hang out and watch a movie. What she didn't know was that Aubrey and Bailey had already planned out that night weeks ago. And the apartment wasn't for watching movies, it was for luring her in. Let's rewind to the first date, November 15th. This is where, looking back, the warning signs were flashing in neon. But in the moment, they just seemed like quirks. Sydney meets Bailey. Bailey is bubbly, a little nervous, but she's not alone. Aubrey Trail is there too. Now this is odd. Who brings a male friend to a first date? Bailey introduces Aubrey as her boss or landlord. The story constantly changed. Aubrey was immediately intense. He dominated the conversation. He had this unsettling gaze. But because Bailey was there, laughing and seemingly comfortable, Sydney pushed the feeling away. Imagine you're sitting across from him. You feel that pit in your stomach, but you rationalize it. He's just an older friend. Maybe he's protective. She said, Bailey was nice, but the guy with her was really loud, like he was trying too hard. Aubrey had a way of weaving these elaborate, unbelievable stories. He told people he was a secret agent, a wealthy businessman. A con artist's trick. Make the story so wild they have to be true, or you're just a crank. Sydney, a nice Midwestern girl, likely just thought he was eccentric. But the biggest red flag? Bailey and Aubrey were inseparable. They lived together. They worked together. They were, in the most literal sense, joined at the hip. A woman on a date shouldn't have her older male landlord there. That should have been the end of it. Yet, Sydney agreed to the second date. Why? Because Aubrey, through Bailey's profile, used a classic manipulation tactic. He made Sydney feel special. He told her she was different. He used flattery as bait. Bailey from Aubrey. I had so much fun. You're the realest person I've met on here. I want you to meet my little housemate and chill at our place tomorrow night. Super casual. That last message, super casual, the ultimate lie. The second date wasn't at a dive bar. It was at their apartment in the tiny town of Wilbur, 40 miles outside Lincoln. An isolated location. And for a predator, isolation is step one. Sydney sent her last text message to her sister just before the second date. It simply read, "Going on a date. I'll let you know when I'm on my way home." But that text, simple as it was, gave police the first crucial piece of information, the name of the woman she was meeting, Bailey Boswell, a name that was about to be linked to a horrific crime. It's Thursday, November 16th, 2017. Sydney drives herself to the Wilbur apartment. You're Sydney. You've driven 40 minutes out of the city. You get there. A small, nondescript building. You knock. Bailey opens the door. She's smiling. The apartment is cluttered, but again, you rationalize it. They just moved in. It's a little messy. Aubrey is there too. He's jovial. He offers you a drink. They put on a movie. Everything feels anticlimactic, boring even. And that's the killer's greatest tool, boredom, making the setting feel so undramatic that you drop your guard completely. This is where the police later on struggled. When people go missing, investigators look for conflict, a fight, an argument, a frantic 999 call. Here, nothing. The texts stop. Silence. Boswell. We were just hanging out, watching a movie. He went to the other room for a bit. She didn't seem scared.
This is the lie. The cover story. What really happened? The details are so dark, so disturbing, they were barely mentioned in the media. Aubrey and Bailey didn't just lure Sydney to an isolated apartment for a casual date. They did it as part of an elaborate, long-term fantasy. A fantasy involving control, torture, and a twisted brand of occultism. Trail, a man who believed he was a superior being, had convinced Boswell that he was over 800 years old. He believed that killing was necessary for his spiritual journey. And Sydney, on that couch, watching that movie, had no idea she wasn't just on a bad date. She was in a trap, and they were about to spring it. The normal atmosphere was about to shatter. The movie they were allegedly watching was never identified. But police found something else in that apartment. A collection of items that Trail used in what he called his rituals. Tools that were not for cooking or cleaning. They were for something horrific. And Sydney, the moment the lights went out for the movie, may have realized she wasn't alone in that room. When Sydney didn't show up for work the next day, her family knew something was wrong. Sydney was dependable. She wasn't the type to just ghost everyone. Her last known text message, "On my way." Then, nothing. Her cell phone immediately went dark. The police start a standard missing persons investigation. They track her phone's last ping, near Wilbur, the tiny town where Aubrey and Bailey lived. They interview Bailey Boswell. She maintains the lie. "Yes, we had a date. Sydney left around 10 p.m. She drove off alone. She seemed calm, cooperative, too cooperative." But what if Sydney Loofe wasn't the first? This is the point in the case where the darkness truly spreads. Police initially treated this as an isolated event, but years later, the full picture of Aubrey Trail and Bailey Boswell's activities would come to light. Trail and Boswell were nomadic. They traveled across the Midwest. They used dating apps. They targeted vulnerable women. They used Bailey to get them in the door. There were other disappearances. Women in small towns along the highway corridor. Women who, like Sydney, had a profile on a dating app. Women who had met a young woman and an older, controlling man. The common threads were there, but the departments never connected them. No centralized database, just isolated missing persons reports in isolated jurisdictions. Trail and Boswell were slipping through the cracks. They were serial predators hiding in plain sight, masked by the sheer volume of dating app hookups happening every single day. Imagine the families of those other women. They had their own theories, their own dread, but no proof, no name to connect the dots. The police had a name in Sydney's case, Bailey Boswell, but she and Aubrey were about to make a break for it. Just 24 hours after Sydney went missing, Bailey and Aubrey were spotted over 600 miles away in a remote part of Kansas. They had changed their appearance, ditched their phones, and believed they were safe. But they left one single, tiny digital breadcrumb that police would eventually follow. A single cell tower ping that led police directly to their escape route. Let's go back inside that apartment. November 16th. The movie is playing. The date is winding down. You're Sydney. You're getting ready to say goodbye, to head to your car, maybe text your roommate about how weird the night was. Aubrey suggests one last drink. You accept. It seems rude not to, but the drink is already mixed. You take a sip. It tastes bitter. A strong vodka, you think. Within minutes, your head starts to swim. The room is spinning. The sound of the movie is distorted. You try to speak. You can't. Your limbs feel heavy. This is not a strong drink. This is a powerful sedative. You try to fight it. You try to stand up. You manage maybe one step before your legs give out. You fall to the floor, and that's when you see it. Bailey, standing over you. Her face is blank. She's not smiling now. She looks cold. And then Aubrey appears. He's not the jovial old man anymore. His eyes are dead, pure malice. He's calm. So calm. He says something that is burned into the transcript of the confession later. Didn't think you'd be this easy. This is the moment from the hook. The terror, the realization. You are completely paralyzed. You're dragged from the living room into a back room. And this is where the unthinkable took place. The details are not for broadcast, but know this. They had tools ready. They had a plan. They inflicted horrific, systematic violence. The kind that takes time. The kind that requires two people. Sydney was held captive for hours.
And then, the cleanup. Bleach. Trash bags. The kind of methodical efficiency that speaks to practice. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a hobby.
When police finally searched the apartment days later, they found nothing obvious. The place was too clean, but a forensic team used a chemical called Luminol, which detects even trace amounts of blood. The apartment lit up like a Christmas tree, especially on the floorboards of the back bedroom. They knew, instantly, that a horrific scene had been erased from that room. Weeks went by. Sydney's family was agonizing. They put out pleas. The story became a local sensation. Police were under pressure. And then, the digital breadcrumb led to the break. That one cell phone ping put Bailey and Aubrey in Kansas. Detectives tracked them down, not based on the murder, but on unrelated warrants. They were questioned about Sydney. They stuck to the story. She left. We don't know anything. But the pressure was mounting. They knew the luminol test had turned up something. They had to get rid of the final piece of evidence, Sydney's body. This is where the story gets its final, tragic chapter. On December 3rd, 2017, nearly 3 weeks after Sydney went missing, her remains were found. She wasn't found in one piece. Her body had been dismembered. Her remains were scattered in garbage bags along a rural, isolated road in Clay County, Nebraska. This was an attempt to make identification impossible, to ensure the body was never found, to delay justice forever. The discovery was confirmation of the worst fear. Sydney had been the victim of an unbelievably brutal, premeditated murder. The police now knew they weren't dealing with a simple missing person case. They were dealing with monsters. The identification was made through dental records. The family's final hope crushed. But the evidence was now overwhelming. The forensics from the apartment, the timeline, the cell data, and the horrific discovery, all pointing to Aubrey Trail and Bailey Boswell. Despite the overwhelming physical evidence, the prosecution worried they couldn't get a conviction without a confession. Aubrey Trail, the master manipulator, was about to deploy a shocking strategy in court, a plan so bizarre it almost worked. Now the couple is in custody. They are being interrogated separately. Bailey is terrified. Aubrey is smug. He knows the system. He thinks he's smarter than the police. But the police were about to make a crucial error, a blunder that would become a central point of the defense's argument for years. They gave Bailey a deal. If she cooperated, she could avoid the death penalty. Bailey, under pressure, gave a statement. She implicated Aubrey. She described the date, the drugging, and the murder, but she downplayed her own role. She claimed she was forced. She claimed she was Aubrey's slave, a victim of his manipulation. The blunder? During the initial hours of questioning, the police may have used language that could be construed as coercive. They were trying to get a confession fast. This allowed Aubrey's defense team to later argue that Bailey's entire testimony was tainted, coerced. And Aubrey was smart enough to capitalize on this. He knew that if he could break Bailey's credibility, his chances of walking free shot way up. Imagine the prosecution. They have all the evidence, the luminol, the body, the timeline. But the star witness, the accomplice who was there for every second of the horror, now has a shaky, flawed statement. Doubt. That's all the defense attorney needs. For months, it looked like the case might fall apart. Bailey's lawyers fought to have her statement thrown out. If her statement was gone, it would be a he said, she said scenario with the jury unsure who to trust. Justice for Sydney Loofe hung in the balance. As the trial date approached, Aubrey Trail suddenly changed his plea to not guilty and began talking to anyone who would listen. He was setting the stage for the most bizarre, theatrical defense in modern history. The trial begins. The atmosphere is electric. Sydney's family is there, demanding justice. The jury is waiting, and Aubrey Trail, the killer, takes center stage. Aubrey's defense isn't denial, it's insanity. He claims the murder was part of a ritual.
He admits to the killing, but claims it was an act of self-defense against a larger, unseen force. He claimed he was possessed. And then the twist. Mid-trial, Aubrey Trail pulls a knife and slashes his own neck. A horrific, theatrical move designed to manipulate the jury and invoke sympathy, or at least a mistrial. The courtroom erupts. He survives, of course. It was a calculated, manipulative stunt, and it worked. The trial was delayed. The jury was now dealing with a man who was clearly unstable. But the prosecution had a crucial weapon. A recorded statement from Bailey, even if flawed, was still admissible. And they had the physical evidence, the bleach-soaked apartment, the dismembered body. They brought in expert after expert to counter Trail's insanity defense. You're on the jury. You've heard the insanity plea. You've seen the self-mutilation. But you've also seen the photos of a bright, smiling Sydney. You've heard the clinical, cold description of how she was killed. The jury saw through the manipulation. The evidence was too strong. The premeditation was too clear. The sheer malice of the crime was too obvious. The verdicts came down. Guilty. Both Aubrey Trail and Bailey Boswell were convicted of first-degree murder. But the story wasn't over. Aubrey Trail was about to give one final, chilling statement from his jail cell. The ultimate confession. A year later, while awaiting sentencing, Aubrey Trail grants an interview. He has nothing left to lose, and he decides to tell the truth. Or his version of it.
He confessed, fully, to the murder of Sydney Loofe. He described the drugging, the binding, the killing. He confirmed the premeditation, but he added a new, horrifying detail. He revealed that the targeting of Sydney Loofe was not a random act. They had been actively hunting for a victim for weeks. They wanted someone they could control, someone they could manipulate. And Sydney, with her kind heart and trust in people, was the perfect target. Trail. We needed to find someone. And when she, Sydney, kept coming back after the first date, it was a sign. She was disposable. That's what Bailey and I said. Disposable. Disposable. A young woman's life reduced to a single, cold word. It perfectly encapsulated the evil of this man. He felt nothing. No remorse. Just the satisfaction of having gotten away with it for as long as he did. Bailey Boswell, for her part, received a sentence of life in prison. Aubrey Trail was sentenced to death. Justice, finally, for Sydney Loofe. But the scar remains. The knowledge that two predators used the most common way people meet today, a dating app, to lure, capture, and destroy an innocent person. And this brings us back to the moment from the beginning. You are Sydney. You're lying there, paralyzed. You hear him say, "Didn't think you'd be this easy." Now you know what he meant. Not just physically easy to subdue, but emotionally easy to lure, easy to manipulate. Because you were a kind person who believed in trust, a trust he and Bailey Boswell exploited for their darkest desires. So, what's the takeaway? The vast majority of people on dating apps are normal. They're just looking for a connection. The cases like Sydney Loofe's, and there are dozens of others, show the horrifying reality. Predators are experts in blending in. Could this happen to you? The answer is, you have to take steps to make sure it doesn't. This next section is not to scare you, but to inform you. These are the actual safety tips used by law enforcement, and they should be mandatory for every dating app user. Tip 1. The first date golden rule. Always meet in a public place, a coffee shop, a busy restaurant, a park. Never, and I mean never, go to a second location, like their house or car on the first date. Or the second. Tip 2. The friend check system. Before every date, text a friend or family member the following: the name and phone number of the person you're meeting, the exact location, and the time you expect to be home. Use the Share My Location feature on your phone until you're safely home. Tip 3. The reverse image search. A profile picture is easy to fake. Right-click or screenshot the profile photo and use Google reverse image search. If that picture pops up on a random stock photo site or on a different person's social media, unmatch immediately. Trail and Boswell used stolen images and created fake identities. Tip 4. Listen to the little voice. That pit in your stomach, that slight feeling of discomfort, it's your ancient hardwired survival instinct. It's better to be rude and safe than polite and sorry. If something feels off, their story changes, they're too intense, they pressure you, get up and leave. No explanation necessary. Tip 5. The duo red flag. Like the Sydney Loofe case, be wary if your date introduces you to an immediate, inseparable companion that wasn't mentioned, especially if that companion is older, controlling, or dominates the conversation. A first date is one-on-one, demanded. Aubrey Trail and Bailey Boswell are behind bars, a small comfort to the family of Sydney Loofe. But their case remains a chilling reminder that the person on the other end of that phone screen might not be who they say they are. Stay safe out there, guys. Be aware. Be smart. Thank you for taking the time to learn Sydney's story and for keeping her memory alive. We must never forget her. If you want me to cover the terrifying case of the Watcher House in New Jersey, subscribe, smash the like button, and comment the name below. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe.